Hello, everybody, and welcome to our podcast, and it's called Card Shop Insiders. I'm John. I'm a veteran of the industry regarding card shop owner, and now we go to Noah.
Hey guys, I'm Noah. I'm excited to be here with John and working with you on this podcast. I play a lot of games. I've got a lot of experience in card shops, but I really enjoy being able to talk with John about his experience in the industry and are excited to bring you some news and updates today.
We're going to have a lot of fun today because I'm wound up. You realize that?
I don't know if John's wound up, but I've got lots of news to talk about, so we're going to have some fun.
We are. All right, go ahead, Noah. You could start it off then.
All right, let's start off with Lorcana. We've been doing a lot of Lorcana start stuff. I think we should maybe start randomly choosing the game that we start with.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't know. I don't want people to think that we favor Lorcana just because I play it a lot.
You play Magic too.
I do. I also play Star Wars. I know how to play Pokemon.
All right. Well, Lorcana is probably the foremost thing. We didn't do an episode last week because you went to the zoo and you watched an elephant piss. You going to tell that story?
No,
you going to tell that story, Noah, today?
About the elephant pissing?
The elephant pissing and your kid's reaction to it.
We just had some anatomy lessons at the zoo with various wildlife, and particularly with an elephant. Good thing we weren't doing any comparisons there. No, let's talk about Lorcana, though. So last weekend was huge for Lorcana. They had their first formal OP events, big regional kind of play. In the United States, it was in Atlanta. And we had several people from our store go, and they've brought back some feedback. I don't know what you heard from the guys. Do you want to share any of what you thought, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, we had 6 people from the store go, and they had a great time. They did say that it was a little bit disorganized. They had 1,980 or 1,988 players that were in the main event. And the problem is they had to use Melee, and Melee was down 3 times. So they spent probably 2 hours more at the venue than they were supposed to. Some of the guys did well. Some of the guys didn't do well. I think 3 of them at least came in the top 500. I know Brandon was 101, which was very, very good for him.
I think if I read the scores right, he was technically tied for 64th, but because of the way that they were breaking the top cut, there were some tiebreakers applied, and he was bubbled out. But
it doesn't matter because he made money. He got a couple of the good cards. He sold one. I guess you had to do at least 3 rounds, and you got one of these specific cards, and it was selling for like $200. And the other one he sold not down at Atlanta, but when he got home, he put it online or whatever the hell he did, and he sold it for $1,600.
Yeah.
So he did well.
There was a lot of money to be made by people that went to these events. I've seen reports and records on the internet. Some of the promos that were not for the main event, but were from the side events, were selling for $5,000 to $1,000 a piece. The play mats that were available there have sold for lots of money. It's a cool thing. I mean, I think it's really good to have prize support that's got value to it. I think that there were a lot of things that can be learned from for the events. I think one of the things, and I don't think they plan to change this in the imminent future, but the thing is they ran 2,000 person events in Europe and the US at the same time. And because of company dynamics, they ran both on Melee.
Oh, okay.
So Melee started off okay. I understand there was a crash in France before Atlanta even got online.
Mm-hmm.
But then once Atlanta got online, the whole thing shut down. And they had a lot of trouble getting it going again. The folks in Atlanta seem to have a lot more trouble managing the side events than what I was hearing reported from France. In France, people got to play multiple side events, both Saturday and Sunday. And there was a lot of money made there. Because the side events were how you got the tickets for the prize wall. Mm-hmm. And the prize wall was where you could get the Rapunzel and Cinderella non-foil promos. And those are going for a ton of money too.
What about the winner that won that gold-plated?
So I think they gave out top 8 in both events, took home a gold serialized card, if I remember that correctly. And so that it has a number on it. Like number 1 of, and I don't remember how many they have, but they have those gold events, or those gold Mickey Mouse cards are for the events this year. So
what are they selling for?
I don't think anybody sold one yet.
but somebody said it could be up to $20,000.
I would assume they're numbered, they're special art, they're gold, and they're hard to get.
Yeah,
They're Disney.
yeah, this is true. I mean, I heard a lot of positive things from the event. Brandon was telling us that he saw a whole bunch of people that are Yu-Gi-Oh champions at the event, Yu-Gi-Oh YouTubers and Pokemon YouTubers. So that's bringing in people from other games. And again, from what I've heard, everybody's saying that the prize support from Ravensburger, that's how you're supposed to say it, not Ravensburger, it's Ravensburger, which makes any damn difference. But the prize support is so much more superior than other card games. And maybe that's why they're drawing additional people.
Yeah, I don't know. I was listening to some high level guys that are playing Lorcana that are also big in like One Piece and Flesh and Blood. They've got lots of tournament wins and things under their belts for those tournaments. They've played in Worlds for Flesh and Blood. But the difference, I think, is the intellectual property rights. I think like a promo card in Flesh and Blood isn't just never going to sell for 50 grand.
True.
But they do sell for a lot of money. I mean, $1,000, $1,200 for some of these big regional event promos. At least that's what I've heard. I've never played Flesh and Blood, but with Disney, you have a market that is not in the card game space to unload your cool product on. And so when you take it to eBay or you take it to these collector sites, you've got people that are not card gamers that want the Disney thing.
True.
They want the Cinderella. They want the Rapunzel. They want the playmats because they're going to frame them. People want Mickey Mouse because he's Mickey Mouse. And so I think that's a big deal. And I think that that's why the value of a special art promo in this game is worth more than others. And I think that's why you're going to see people that are playing other games getting into this. The other thing is the game is awesome. Everybody that plays this game from any background says that the mechanics are really good, that the strategic gameplay is really important, and that there's a good diversity in the like meta decks of what can be played and what can win a tournament. I mean, if you look at it, the two tournaments, Atlanta was won by a deck that featured Mufasa and some amethyst or purple cards that people weren't really keen on here, but they won with that. And then in a major meta deck, the Steel Songs deck, actually similar to the list that my wife plays, won the deck or won the game, the tournament in Lille.
What does it take actually to be good at the game? I know you have to have the cards, but I see people who have the cards that are struggling. What does it actually take to win?
I mean, there's an element of understanding the mechanics of the gameplay. There's a tactical side of it. There's a lot of intricate decisions in the game that are made, particularly early in the game, that determine how the later game goes. Putting a card away into your resources that you'll never see again is a choice that you make every turn. And if you put away the wrong card and then it turns out you needed it 2 turns later, you're not going to get it back. And so that's one of the harder decisions that you have to make. And I think that just understanding and knowing the other decks, I think one of the things that I work on trying to teach like my kids how to get better and my wife how to get better is knowing what other people might do. So this other deck's going to play a card that kills everything on the table. It usually happens on turn 6 or 7. So when you're getting to turn 6 or 7, you think about what you're going to play. You hold stuff back. You manage what you're doing because you expect them to do this thing that would be really bad for you. And then you can have a chance to recover after that. Or do you read the game situation and say, like, I'm going to go for it. And if they have it, I lose. And if they don't have it, I win.
So there is some luck involved, naturally.
I mean, with every card game, there's luck. We call it RNG when we play, random number generation, because there's randomness to shuffling your deck and what you're going to get when. But there's also a lot of skill that mitigates the RNG. And when you're playing against other high-level players, I think that you have the ability to try to have the best person win. Occasionally you lose because you don't draw something that you need. But those players know how to set up their game and play strategically to give themselves the best opportunity to win.
So they have to be able to recover quickly or understand how to do so.
When you have to know how to recover, like you have to know what you want to draw. And if you draw certain things, you have to think about what you're going to do or what you're going to take off of your opponent's side of the table to try to stay in the game. It can be obvious after a few turns what's going to happen and how a game's going to go. But I watched a lot of the coverage from the tournament in Atlanta this last weekend, and it's really interesting to watch like high level players make choices. And it's interesting to watch from the perspective of like a person that can see both hands and know what's going on the table and to kind of get a understanding for why people made certain choices. But ultimately, I think there's a lot of skill just in knowledge of knowing what could happen and then making decisions based on what you think your opponent's trying to do and what you might be able to do.
I noticed there was like teams that were, they all wore similar sweatshirts or T-shirts down there, and sometimes they're sponsored by stores. Now, to be a member of a team, I think is advantageous because you can play against that person in the team. You could share cards with that person. And I believe the most important thing is practice, 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 practice. And, somebody like you that's a casual player that has a job and has a family, it's kind of at a disadvantage unless you make this your all encompassing hobby, which you don't have the luxury of doing. Let me ask you this question. Your mother is involved in this. All right. She doesn't want to play the game, but she's a Disney fanatic. And you mentioned the other day that she wants to start collecting the cards.
Yeah, she decided not to, but
oh, she did. Okay.
Yeah, she told me this morning she's gotten something else she got hooked on, and she's gonna use her money that way. But she was tempted last week.
Oh, I'm sure she was. That's good though. That just proves that the game appeals, or the cards themselves appeals not only to gamers who want to play the game, but collectors.
Well, my origin in gaming and collectible cards really comes from my parents, because when I was a kid, my parents used to take us to the shop, like the sports card store, and we would buy the movie collector sets. Like there's Snow White cards that my parents have multiple full sets of, Star Trek cards, Marvel comic book, Marvel Masterpieces was a product that was put out, I think, by like Ultra Pro or something in the 90s. Like my parents collected multiple sets of those. And like I was there to participate in that. Like the idea, like you talk about the addiction for us opening packs for these games. And that was something that we did as a family. My parents would go, and when they had saved up the money for it, they would buy 3 or 4 boxes of these things, and we would open and organize them. And then in the 90s, when the Star Wars game came out, produced by Decipher, I saw that in the same shop. We were there buying some of these Disney cards, and I saw the Star Wars stuff on the shelf, and I asked what it was. The guy said that it was a Star Wars game that was similar to opening packs, but I bought the starter decks, and back then the starter decks were random. Like they didn't, like for Lorcana, you have prefix starter decks. Like there's no real reason to buy multiple copies unless you just want the cards multiple times. But like the first set of Decipher starter decks were 60 random cards that were light side or dark side. And so I bought a light side deck and a dark side deck and pulled some cool stuff. Didn't know it was that cool when I got it, but it had the rule book, like 40 pages of little tiny print. And I learned how to play that myself. And that's how I got into playing the games. And then I collected Star Wars for years.
I like, from a personal perspective, I like seeing what you're doing with your kids. You're getting them involved in the game, but it's good that you're sharing these values with them. You're sharing the game with them. You're sharing with them the respective value of the cards. And that's important. I think that's good to learn at an early age. So whatever your parents taught you, you're turning around and you're bringing it to your children and to your wife, basically.
Yeah. I don't think my wife ever thought she'd play a card game. She knew that I played games, but that wasn't something that she ever did really. She's a board gamer and a family style gamer, but playing a collectible card game was not something that she was really.
But she likes it. When she comes in here and screams, not screams, but is so elated when she wins, it's exciting to see. And I'm sure you get gratification out of it too. and she's gotten very competitive at times.
She's pretty good at it. I mean, she doesn't give herself enough credit for it, but she doesn't have all of the meta memorized or the cards memorized like I do. But she has learned patterns and she knows what she wants to do, and she plays well based on what she wants to commit to the game in terms of mental resources.
I don't know if we talked about this, but we've gotten approval to run the next Lorcana Store Championship. Did we talk about that 2 weeks ago? I'm not even sure.
I think when we last talked about it, I just said that the promo cards look awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll know more on June 10th. They'll give us more information regarding how to set it up and what the needs are going to be. And it's going to be on Melee again. And I'm probably going to restrict it, you know, to people who come into my store. And I've already had some inquiries about it. So the excitement's still there. All right, let's move on.
Well, we do need to stay on Lorcana for a second because I think a lot about the Lorcana space is going to change in the coming months because of an announcement that was made on Discord and about Pixelborn last week.
That's right. Yeah.
So people that are listening that don't know, there was an informal client for Lorcana that you could play online. It was produced by Pavel, who's a programmer from Europe. He wanted to give people that don't have the opportunity to play early in set one an opportunity to play the game, even though local stores weren't going to be able to carry it. That was sort of a consequence of the Ravensburger marketing choices. They weren't putting the product out. I think they've actually just this summer taken it to Australia and New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
So like that limitation and the geographic restrictions made it so that a lot of people weren't able to play. But it's on the internet, right? The internet goes all over the world. People were really excited for the game. And so Pavel created a client that allowed you to use the game rules for Lorcana to play a game against each other. What he didn't do was steal the intellectual property from Disney or Ravensburger and try to sell it as his own. He's been very open about it from the beginning. He said that this is not like my game. I've just created a computer program that implements the rules. He didn't put the images in. Somebody else interfaced with him and said, hey, if I scan the images in this certain way, can you make it so that they'll interface and show up when you play the game? And he did that. But he's always been very clear that if there was ever any issue with Ravensburger or Disney, that he would shut it down if they asked him to. And that has happened. And I thought we'd read his statement because I had a lot of respect for him and what he said real quick. But he posted on the 29th, so after the tournaments were finished in Atlanta and Lille, he posted and said that earlier this month, Disney representatives contacted me. I was advised that, quote, Disney has intellectual property rights in the Disney Lorcana cards, and that Disney has requested Pixelborn to respect these rights by not copying the cards or in any way suggesting an affiliation with Disney, end quote. I've always stated that I would respect such a request, and I plan to keep my word and will not grasp at technicalities. Pixelborn will stop support for Lorcana before the 16th of June 2024. The Pixelborn Discord server will remain a safe, welcoming place to discuss everything Lorcana. My heart is shattered to pieces. I have put everything into this project for the past year and a half. Every night, weekend, and holiday. I know it meant a lot for many people. It's the only way to experience the game we all love. I genuinely believe Ravensburger is the best company that could have developed and now supports the game. The past weekend proves that Lorcana has a bright future. Thank you for all the sharing this journey with me. You might not realize it, but every single one of you matters. With all the charity donations we've made, we really brought meaningful change to the world. If you ever feel down, always remember that. I will always cherish you. Be happy. Forever yours, Pavel. And then in a postscript, he said thank you to several of the moderators and people that have helped run the servers. He talks about the Patreon that they'd run, which is how he was maintaining the server costs. And then any excess money was donated to charities, which you and I have talked about before. He documented really well, showing the payments and things to prove that he wasn't keeping any of the money. And then he mentioned that he's worked on some other game engines that play some other games. But he doesn't know if those are going to be released because one of them is attached to the Star Wars Unlimited game. That also being a Disney property, he kind of expects they feel the same way about that product as they would about this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unfortunate that Disney came down on it, and it's all about intellectual property. I know that's not your area of expertise, I know you wanted to share some of that intellectual property and what it actually means.
Well, I mean, one of the things I've seen is a lot of people have tried to say that like he should keep the game going because he's not putting the images up and he's not really doing something that directly like affects Disney's intellectual property right, and that it's probably more of like a Ravensburger right because of whatever the assignment agreement is between Ravensburger and Disney. But the reality is, in American intellectual property law, even the slightest amount of infringement can't be tolerated, or else you can lose your legal protections for all of your intellectual property. And so Disney has to be vigilant. I know a lot of people have really criticized Disney for this and for other intellectual property decisions they make. They take down a lot of videos on YouTube that have Disney images or Disney music in them.
Mhm.
But they have to do that or else they'll lose the right to enforce. They can't pick and choose. They can't say that Pavel gives money to charity, so we're going to let him keep his game up because it's on the fringe gray area of intellectual property law. They have to say, we found this, it's close enough that we want it to stop and that it could be construed as a breach of intellectual property rights. And so as somebody that has legal experience in education, I respect Disney's opinion. I'm disappointed by it. I think it's going to have a big impact on how the game is played, and particularly as it relates to things like the teams that you talked about. I think it's going to be a lot more important for high level play for people to have a group of other high level players that they can play with.
Mhm.
I think it's a lot different for me to play with my 8-year old. I can't get a lot better playing with my 8-year old. He can get a lot better
Mhm.
because he learns from and sees my play patterns and he gets better. My daughter and my wife do the same thing. But like you need to play with people that have like the high level gameplay experience, and you need to be able to play a variety of decks. And an electronic client is really important for that. And it's my hope that that is an expectation that's coming soon from Ravensburger and Disney, that they're going to put out some sort of an electronic client and that it won't be oppressively expensive.
Do you have any suspicions that Pavel's going to be part of it?
I don't think so from what he's said.
Yeah, but he continued to, even though he got the cease and desist order, right? Still he kept working on it and he put things out there. Why would he do that? If I were him, I'd say screw it. I'm not doing this anymore.
I mean, I think he really loves the community. I sent him a direct message thanking him for his work and commending him for his integrity and keeping to his word on this. And he responded directly to me,
Did he?
um, which I'm sure he didn't have to do. Thousands of people probably sent him similar messages of all different types, encouraging him or trying to get him to defend himself. I just wanted him to know that I appreciated the integrity that he showed by saying I would do this if they asked me to stop and by stopping.
So
But
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you don't think that he's going to have a hand in things in the future as far as, the official Ravensburger Disney quote unquote client or online site?
I think he's obviously a gifted programmer. I think what he developed, I believe, largely on his own is an incredible play experience. And I
Mhm.
think that it is sad that Disney or Ravensburger might not want to use that as the backbone of a client for themselves. But they can make their own choice about whether they try to invest in that, try to make out a financial deal with him to take that code and use it, or to bring him in to do work. But I also don't have enough information to give a real opinion on that. I don't know if he's interested in that. I don't know what he actually does,
Yeah.
like professionally. I know he loves Lorcana. I know he was at Lille. I know he went to a couple of like social events with people that are popular on the internet. There were pictures posted. He was in a lot of that stuff and he was close to those people. I think he's going to keep playing this game. I think that he's going to continue to enjoy the experience of traveling around Europe to go to some of these tournaments. I just don't know if he's interested in working for Disney or Ravensburger, even as a consultant.
Money talks, Noah. No, money talks.
Well, money does talk, but I don't know what he does. I don't know if he has money. I don't know if he's working in a position that he's happy with. I mean, I have a job. It keeps me busy, pretty busy, and it pays for what my family needs. And so, if somebody were to offer me to do like similar different work, I don't know that I'd be able to change that because I'm in a position that's pretty comfortable and I can still do my hobby. He might be in the same situation. So I can't speculate as to whether he wants to. I also think Disney has 100 programmers that work for them. I think
Sure.
Ravensburger can find 100 programmers that work for them.
True.
And I don't mean any disrespect to Pavel or anybody that works in the computer programming field, but I think that the way that corporations work, they will think they can just find somebody else to write code.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, I think with that said, though, I think it is a big blow. I think that if you don't have a good group of people to play with, I think the Chicago tournament, which is next weekend, is going to have the first experience playing with the new set in competitive play, and they're going to still be able to use Pixelborn for testing. But then after that, we're looking at tournaments. What's Toronto in July? I can't remember all of them, but Toronto, I think Vegas is on the list in the U.S. Bochum, I said that wrong, I'm sure, in Europe and Germany, a couple others. They're all scheduled out all the way into September. And as we go into those deeper, I think you're going to see like a separation of the players that are at those events, that people are not going to be as good down the table, in spots 200 through 2000 as they were at these first tournaments, because I think they're going to play less.
Do you think, I know it's speculation, with Gen Con coming up in August, it is in August, right? You think Ravensburger is going to make an announcement that they have an online platform? Or it's possible that they make an announcement at the D23 convention in Anaheim coming up, which is a Disney collector, type of convention. Because I know Ravensburger is going to be there, and it's possible that they could have a D23 special portfolio of cards again, like they did originally.
They did that last year, and I think it's not outside the realm of possibilities that Ravensburger and Disney work together to make a big announcement through the summer here. I mean, the game's a year old. They're 4 sets in. They're clearly having success, and they do need to do something to like excite and draw people in. And I think that the online client is a good way to expose the game to new people.
Sure.
It's easy to market online clients too. I mean, it's basically running commercials on YouTube and Facebook and TV. And Disney's really good at running commercials. I mean, I don't know if you can get very far on the internet on my browser history without finding like a Disney cruise commercial and a Disney vacations commercial. I mean, my Hulu ads are almost exclusively ads to go travel to Disney.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, I think that that's a space that they want to be in. And I think that they're going to want to take advantage of that market. And they know that there's a value to playing their game online. Some people speculated that they thought that the online client being free and not making you buy cards was hurting sales. I just don't think that's true. I mean, we've talked a lot about availability and sellouts from the distributors, and I don't think that it's reasonable to think that they were not selling product at a high rate, much higher than they expected, and that they were being hurt by the online client. I think the online client pushed people to buy cards.
Probably. Yeah.
I tried the game first online, then I bought the cards. A lot of people did that, and I think a lot of people that are gamers just want the physical cards anyway, and the physical experience is a different thing. But I think that's a good place for us to transition over to talk quickly about the other games, and then maybe we can talk for a little bit about some of the topic that we had for today's podcast. But exciting news. Store championships look like they're really fun for Star Wars. A lot of people have been posting on the internet that they're winning these promo cards. People are having a lot of fun playing the game. I actually got to play finally last week for a little bit at our local shop, and I really enjoy the game. It's a different game than Lorcana is. It's got some different nuance and some different technical abilities in play, but it's still a lot of fun, and I just love Star Wars. So it's a special property to me to be able to play a game in.
Yeah, we're scheduled for June 15th, the day before Father's Day. And I've already had people inquiring about signing up and how much it's going to cost and, so forth and so on. I know some of the other stores, they've given away lightsabers and, the special, what's those special cards cost or called? The, what the hell are they called?
The showcase cards?
Showcase cards. They've given away a showcase card here and there, try to entice people. I'm not going to do that to me, that's just extra hype that I don't need. And it adds to the expense of if I have to pay for something that I'm going to be giving away, I have to retrieve that cost.
Yeah.
And naturally, it's going to make the entry fee into the event higher. And I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to post it today in my newsletter, what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it.
But I think you don't have to have extra prizes to get people to play in a store or set championship. I mean, these are called store championships, right? Store showdowns.
Showdown.
So they're giving you the prizes.
Right.
I mean, they sent the pack. I've seen the prizes. We held them up last week when we were recording. They're really good looking. Like, it's a cool card. Yeah. People want to play it. The participation card is cool. I think that's what you need to play. If you don't want to play in the tournament, this is supposed to be the highest level of casual play. Mm-hmm. This is not supposed to be the lowest level of competitive play. And so if you don't want to be in it because it doesn't have a lightsaber or it doesn't have a showcase card, which, by the way, neither you nor I have seen a showcase card.
I've seen them online. That's it. I haven't seen one in the store.
I mean, there have been a lot of boxes of this product open at the store, and I've never seen a physical showcase card. Like, it's not happening. Mm-hmm. Like here. I mean, and there's supposed to be like one in every 13 boxes. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've opened dozens of boxes between all the patrons in the store. People are opening them in the store regularly. Yep. Never see one of those.
Nope.
So I'm a little disappointed. I might be a little salty. I opened a couple of boxes of cards. And
how many is a couple?
We don't talk about that.
All right. You don't want your wife to know.
It's like Bruno.
Uh-huh.
Actually, that's a funny thing. One of the content creators online says that he got to talk with one of the developers of the Lorcana game, and he just outright asked him, he said, "Hey, Pavel says they're shutting it down. Are you going to put up a client?" And he was like, "Look, the online client is like Bruno. We don't talk about it."
That's a good evasive answer, isn't it?
Well, it gives the implication that it's coming, so it made everybody happy. Set 2 for Star Wars is coming out, though, in July. Right. Spoilers have been going up. Things look really awesome. I think it's going to be another exciting product release. I think it's something that you can look forward to being able to sell, make some money off of, and I look forward to opening some. Again, an undisclosed amount of that product may or may not be opened and consumed by me and my family. But
I won't tell your wife.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
Okay.
Other things, though, coming out, Modern Horizon 3 Magic product.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Even though it's expensive, I've gotten a lot of calls about how much is this, how much is that, I want this, I want that. So the product will be here tomorrow, which will be, that's Tuesday. I actually sent a text message to my sales rep this morning because I had 3 more boxes of collector boosters in abeyance until next week. I was going to get them. I told him ship them. I couldn't get the entire order shipped because it was so damn expensive. I didn't want to put out all that money. And I asked my sales rep, I said, my order in comparison to some of the other orders. He said, well, I already processed a $100,000 order this morning. That was last week. And he said, we're waiting on a $300,000 order from another customer. He said, the customer, he owes us some money. Evidently, he's got credit with the distributor. So I guess they're waiting for him to pay that, whatever he owes first, before they extend him another $300,000 in credit, which is probably the right thing to do. Again, we were allocated on everything, which is kind of ridiculous. My allocation on the collector boxes was 8. Now, this pisses me off because this morning I got online on eBay, and I was checking out some of the online sellers. And I don't know where the hell they're getting this stuff from. But one online seller, he's already sold or pre-sold 255 collector boxes. 255. And you know how it says how many more you have? More than 10. So who knows? He could have another 400 or 500 of them. Where the hell is he getting them all? And another thing, the commander decks. The regular, not the collector decks. Collector decks are hard to get. I got allocated 2 of the regular commander decks. He's already pre-sold 689 of them. So again, where the hell are they getting all this stuff?
This is the question I asked you a couple weeks ago when we were talking about allocation as our topic for the episode. I want to know if you went to Southern Hobby, who we've talked about as one of your top very good distributors, and you said, I've got $100,000. I want to buy Modern Horizon 3 with it. Are you still on allocation at that point? Or did
Probably.
they make it work?
Probably. They'll give me a little bit more. However, because of my buying habits, and they look at your monthly, purchase. So if I purchase $10,000 a month, they're not going to go and give me more because they don't have more. They're going to satisfy the person who spends $300,000 a month more. But this is kind of ridiculous for an online. I mean, he's an online store, plus it's a legitimate store up in New York, I believe. Now, again, he's pre-sold 689 of the Commander decks. I was allocated two. So how the hell is he getting so many of them?
Well, that's what I'm saying. How much money do you have to put on the table to get to move up the chain? I just don't know that I understand that.
A lot. And you have to be consistent. I just can't say, hey, I got $100,000. I want as much Modern Horizons 3 as you can give me. They're not going to do that.
But you can't be consistent if they don't give you the chance to buy in the first place.
But you have to be consistent month after month after month.
Right. I mean, I get it. They supposedly have limited access to the product. And so if they've only got, 100,000 boxes that they can sell between all their people, they've got to take care of their people. And they take care of their high spenders first.
Well, it's just like the Lorcana a couple of weeks ago. Ravensburger added another 600 stores. Between the three distributors that distribute Lorcana, they had to figure out how the hell to supply the other 600 stores. I got a couple of more troves last week, and I got 2 more play mats and a couple of boxes here and there of the new set, Ursula's Revenge. But, at least I got something. And again, with this, I asked my sales rep, I said, look, I have 3 people who want full sets. I've got 2. Is there a possibility I'm going to get another? Can I get another one? I don't know, John. I really don't know. And we're going to try to get you one. He said, but forget the collectors. The collectors are not going to be more available. Fortunately, I got 2 of them. And I've already committed one to one of my regular customers at a reasonable price. It's actually $150 less for the whole set that's selling on TCG Player right now.
Well, so let's talk about that for a second. That was one of the things I wanted to say about Modern Horizon 3 is that the pre-sale pricing on the internet for these products is out of this world. Not in a good way.
No.
I have seen legitimate postings with sales for individual Commander decks of the collector's version, the hollowed out fancy version, $300 to $500.
That's for the Eldrazi one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for the Eldrazi one.
For the regular, not foiled versions, $300, $250
for a whole set or for individual?
No, for an individual deck.
Well, they're screwing over anybody that does that and buys that are out of their damn mind if they can't get it from their local store.
But people are paying for it. This is the problem.
No, it's cardboard crack.
You put it out on the internet and somebody goes and pays for it.
Right.
And then you get another one and you try to sell that one for the same price. It's not a reasonable way for these products to be distributed, particularly when these collector's decks, when they come out with regular sets, should be sold for the $50 to $75 range. And this product, because it's got the Modern Horizons 3 label on it, it's got a couple of big reprints in it. All of a sudden, it's triple.
Yep. Because there's no MSRP on it.
Right. But MSRP is just a suggestion anyway.
Look, as a store owner, you got to be reasonable. If you have a customer that comes in and supports your store on a weekly basis, and he wants a set that's, that it's very expensive online, and if you could sell it to him cheaper, do it. It'd be a no-brainer because you're building up that good rapport with that individual customer.
You're still making profit.
Right. I'm not making as much.
But you don't actually lose money when you sell a product for less than somebody else sells it for.
Sure.
Because you know what you paid to get it, and you know what you paid to get it shipped here, and you're not going to sell for less than that price.
No. But what hurts sometimes, it doesn't hurt because I've been using it for a while, is the loyalties rewards program. So this person may have built up a credit of $25 in points that he can apply to this. Again, it's integrity of the store, and you want to have a good relationship with that customer because you want them to keep coming back, and that's important.
Yeah, but if we do the math on it, really, I have to get 500 points to get $25 off.
Right,
So I had to give you $500 for a
right,
$25 coupon.
right.
And then I get to use the $25 coupon, and then I'm still spending money.
True.
So it is a net positive for the store.
Yeah,
We've talked about why it's value. I mean, it's great for me as a consumer because I can get $25 off once every couple of months. You know, some people want to get that off every couple of weeks. And high five to them. High five to you.
Yeah. I'm still doing my taxes. It should be completed this week. Last year, it was almost $15,000 in loyalty rewards credits going out. And that's a significant number. That probably was 30% or 40% higher than the previous year. So, sales were good last year. Not as good this year so far. They're okay.
It also doesn't hurt when you're selling products like Modern Horizons 3 collector's boosters that can sell for 2 to 3 times what you pay for them.
True.
It's not killing anybody.
And of the two that I'm getting, I tell you, one's already allocated to a customer. I'm going to probably keep the other one in the back room. I'm not going to do anything with it. It's going to sit on the shelf because if they don't come out with more of them, which I don't think they're going to do, the value of that is going to be exponentially higher.
Yeah.
It's a gamble. It's a gamble for me. I could sell it to somebody, or I could just say, hell with it. I'm going to keep it. And I think I'm going to keep it.
Well, hitting my segue.
We're using that word again.
Another high value or a high promotional value product was the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rarities Collection 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that product just came through the store over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
And it sold really well after an initial speed bump with people not being here for that first week with the YCS, right?
Yeah. And they were gone this weekend. There was another thing in Indianapolis. And next weekend, there's another thing in Hickory, North Carolina. So all the local Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are gone. They're up there.
Well, you get them on Wednesday.
I get them on Wednesday, and they prepare for the weekend. However, I'm used to getting them on Wednesday and on Sundays. And that hurts. I mean, all these events, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Runs events all the time, which drives me crazy. But that's the way it is. I have the option to run some of these big events, and I've done it one time before. And I think we talked about it once before. I had 50-something people. And by the time you pay for judges and all this other baloney, I make $100? And it wasn't worth it to me. I'm not doing it. Mm-mm.
Well, let's talk for a minute, John, now that we've kind of got... I think we're wrapped up on the news. Do you have any more news?
Nope.
Okay, nope. I hope we have more news coming up next week.
Let me turn the page.
Turn the page. All right, let's talk for a minute about just a quick disclaimer, and then we'll do a little bit of a shallow run-through of some professional services, I think, that you might need to use if you were opening your own store. Again, with the idea behind the podcast is that we can share information and experience from John and from myself about the card store and about the idea of running a card store business so that other people might get value from that, whether it's value that you empathize more with your local store owner or whether you try to start your own shop somewhere and you're able to have some success because what you hear. Both of those things would be positive experiences, I think, from listening to the podcast. But before we get into talking about this particular piece of information, I do want to say with the disclaimer that we are not giving anybody legal or financial or any other form of restricted advice. This is not personal information for you to use or to take as a consultation for how you should manage your individual situation. And each of the different types of professionals that we're going to talk about, our perspectives come from our interactions with people that work in those fields, and your experiences may be different and your needs may be different depending on where you are and what local rules and regulations apply to you.
I agree. No, that's a great disclaimer. And I think I mentioned that a long time ago. It's my opinion and how it worked for me. I've had a couple of people who listen to the podcast to come into the store, and they say, the information that we're giving is good information, not only for a card shop starting, but for basically any small business. Again, using your term, let's segue. Is that how you say it? Segue
That's a good word.
into what the legal and professional type things you need. And the first thing you need to do is get a tax ID. That's the first thing. And once you get a tax ID, you're obligated to collect taxes or sales taxes from your local, from the people that come into the store, and you send to the state government each month. So in North Carolina, in this particular county that we're at, it comes out to 7.5%. So if I, sell $10,000 in a month, my obligation to the Department of Revenue in North Carolina is $750. So I bank that money for the whole month, and then once a month, I do it the old-fashioned way. I can pay it online, but screw it, I want to hold on to my money or their money as long as I can, and I write a check every month, to them. And each state's different, and as far as North Carolina is concerned, there's 100 different counties, and each county rate is different, which is kind of strange.
There's also
City rates and county rates. It drives you nuts. But it all gets sent to, the Department of Revenue in North Carolina, and then they disseminate to the counties and the cities how much money they get. But, that's a responsibility. And having a sales tax or ID, or it allows you to go to a distributor and say, hey, I want to buy your product, and I have a tax ID, so you're not charged tax on that particular item. You get it from them, and then you resell, or it's called a resale license, basically. Uh, and I can go to Sam's Club and give them the information, and I buy drinks and snacks and all the other necessities that I need for the store. With this tax ID.
Yeah.
That's number one.
So the first way that you can get advice about how to do that process is to either talk to an accountant who would help you with dealing with some of the tax stuff and your tax obligations,
Right.
or to talk to a business attorney, which segues, again, we're going to use segue a lot because you made fun of me for it, and now I'm going to use it a lot. But that segues nicely into a second kind of information that you might want to work with and consider early on in the business formation process, and that is legal organization. Whether you're working, we talked before, sole proprietorship is an option. In North Carolina, that's where you run a business under your own name, but you kind of use a doing business as, and you get personally taxed for all the stuff the business does. There are more advanced options that you can do for business organization. You can limit your liability using an LLC. You can also formally incorporate in a couple of different ways. You're also legally allowed to incorporate businesses in lots of different states and then work in other states. And lawyers and financial professionals can give you advice about what's the best way to organize that. I mean, a fun fact that most people don't know, a lot of major corporations are organized as Delaware corporations. Right. And they do that for favorable tax treatments. But then they also have to pay certain types of taxes in the states where they operate and where they work, which for a lot of major companies is all 50 states. But they get some tax benefits from being organized as a Delaware company. Now, a small company like a card shop might not really experience the same financial benefit of being incorporated in Delaware, but working mostly in North Carolina. So people might consider incorporation or more advanced business entities being organized in the state that they operate in.
Yeah, I chose to do it as a sole proprietorship. I don't like all the formalities that are involved with an LLC, because you have to, you still have to have, I guess, a board meeting once a year or something like that, or you have to claim that you have one, and you have to pay your taxes at a specific time every year, and it was just too much of a hassle. So I kept it as a sole proprietorship.
Businesses pay taxes a month before individuals.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot of different reasons to incorporate. And I think that's something to talk with an attorney about or an accountant about and say, like, look, is it going to benefit me to have this organization? Or like, it's expensive to incorporate or to formally organize as an LLC. You have to have legal documents prepared. You can pay for those in a lot of different ways. You can get them off of some websites that do forms that you can fill in.
Sure.
You could pay an attorney to draft custom paperwork for you, but all that has costs: $500, $1,000, $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, the government's going to get their little bit of blood out of you too. There's a fee for registering with the Secretary of State. There's a fee for registering with the federal government. There's a fee for this. There's a fee for that. And so you're going to pay fees to be able to do that. And as a first time business, or as a getting it on the ground floor with a card shop, you may or may not need to do that.
Well, when you get your tax ID or your reseller license, you can do it just using your social security number.
Yep.
There is another thing. Was it EII or
EIN?
EIN to get a federal, a tax ID number from the federal government instead of using your regular social security number. I have them both. However, it's easier for me just to give them my social security number when I do it.
Yeah, the EIN has some value. It's got different things that it's good for in terms of insulating you versus your business and separating the two things. But it also can provide some complications, and it also creates the expectation that you're going to file using your EIN with the federal government so they know what you've done every year.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, again, a question for your specific circumstances to take to these professionals and get consultations. You don't have to commit to hiring or putting a lawyer on retainer to get answers to questions like, is it a good idea for me to do this? Do I need this? Do I not need this? Another one that we haven't talked about is insurance.
True.
There are professional insurance salespeople, and working with them to talk about the different types of insurance you might need as a business is something that we've kind of touched a couple of different ways as we've talked about developing a business. But when you're starting out and you're looking to do consultations with people, talking to an insurance broker about what policies you might need. Renter's insurance for a commercial lease is something that you should consider, especially if your lease includes specific risks, like you're responsible.
Well, you have to have it.
You might be required to have certain types. Also, renter's insurance can give you some liability coverage, general liability coverage for injuries or accidents that happen in your store. You want to make sure you're responsible and have coverage for that. Otherwise, you could find yourself in a world of hurt if somebody needs to have medical bills paid or other stuff.
And my recommendation is to shop around.
Yes.
I mean, because all insurance companies are going to give you different quotes. And personally speaking, I found State Farm to be the best for me. And I've used them ever since I've been in business. Again, it's a quarterly expense because that's the way I choose to pay it. And, it protects myself and, the inventory that I have, against liability and theft and things like that. And review it every year. I don't do that, unfortunately. I'm kind of lazy. I admit it. But yeah, you got to review it every year because you're going to get more inventory. And the value of the inventory is going to be more money than what your policy originally called for. So you got to review that stuff. And it's up to you. I mean, it's up to you to go to your insurance broker.
Well, your insurance policy covers different things. So what you're referencing with talking about your inventory is your like insurance for loss. So if the building was to burn down or you were to be robbed and stuff was to disappear from the store, you have some insurance that allows you to recover for lost property.
Right.
But I mean, if I'm in the store and I stand up on a table and I fall off of the table and I break my arm, then you have liability for that, being the store where the accident occurred. And that's why you have liability insurance to cover those type of injuries. If you're running a tournament like these big ones and people start hitting each other, they could sue the store owner and say that you were running the tournament, you were responsible for safety and welfare during the event, and something bad happens, so you have to pay for that.
Well, it's up to the store owner to really maintain that too. You got to be vigilant. You got to watch what goes on in your store. If there's a heated argument with somebody, between two people, you got to intervene and stop that before anything negatively happens. I've had people that I've thrown the hell out of the store because they were very argumentative with me and with other people. And if you were going to stand up on the table, you wouldn't be standing up on the table long. I'd say, no, get your ass off the damn table. And I've done that with some of these kids.
I think you've had to. But I think what you've just described is the reason why the store holds some responsibility for an injury that happens in the store,
Mm-hmm.
because you're the shopkeeper and it's your job to make sure that the environment is a safe environment for whatever's going on here. And like you said, you intervene. You say no.
You
say
have
get
to.
out.
You have to.
People that we should talk to, real estate professionals. I know we talked about leases at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and leases overlap between real estate professionals and lawyers. You can have either or both review a lease for you and tell you if it's standard or if there's abnormalities, if there's risk in it, if there's things that aren't expected, if there's stuff you want to ask for to be put into a lease. I think one thing that we discussed briefly, and maybe we'll talk again in a future episode about, is the importance of negotiating your lease. The process of negotiation can be intimidating, particularly when you're working in a commercial space, because a lot of commercial buildings are owned by bigger businesses or entities that have like a big lawyer or a big real estate broker that's working with them. And so
Mm-hmm.
it gives the aura of power. And so it's hard to say like, well, hey, actually, I'd like the lease to say that you're going to pay for this upgrade or you're going to be responsible for this. Why does this say I have to pay for your air conditioning units when you get to keep the building for 50 years and I'm only going to be here for 2 years? Why is the minimum term this? Can I have this minimum term? What about these rate increases? Do they have to be this high? Can we negotiate something different? I think there's a lot of different discussion that you can have. Personally, have negotiated leases for the business that I work in and run, and that was something that I had to learn. In that process, I was a little surprised sometimes with how ask and answer went. But if you don't ask the question, people aren't going to respond.
And you can't be intimidated. You got to be in there. You got to be assertive. You can't be mealy mouthed and say, I'll take whatever you give me, because they'll take advantage of it.
Well, and that's, I think, part of the process of being a business particularly in the American business environment, is that you have to work to make yours. Mm-hmm. And you have a responsibility to get the best lease that you can get, but then they have a responsibility to their business to get the best lease they can get. And while we talk about the card shop and your commitment to the store patrons a lot, landlords do not feel the same way about their tenants.
They could care less.
They might care about their tenants.
No, they don't care, Noah.
It depends. Sometimes you rent a family and it might be different. But if there's a complete third-party real estate transaction and you don't know the person that you're renting your building to from anybody else, you have no loyalty to them. You also don't gain loyalty. In my experience, renting from the same person for 5 to 10 years does not warrant you getting special privileges when you renegotiate your lease at year 10.
With a big company.
With a big company.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if you're working with a local guy that you're one-on-one with, that you've known for 20 or 30 years, you might get special treatment or you might be able to get a favorable deal. But if you're working with a big company, their lease is going to go to this number. They know that this is their price per square foot. They know that this is what they're willing to pay for, they're not willing to pay for. And as far as they're concerned, they'll let a place sit empty.
Oh, I know. I've seen a lot of that happen.
And we've talked about looking at like strip malls and things like that. Strip malls are very willing to let a lot or a unit stay vacant instead of filling it with somebody that's paying them less than what they want.
It's a tax write-off for them too.
It is. And that's the way, like, you're competing with the tax write-off. When you're like, well, would you rather have it be empty or would you give me the rent for 50% off? And they're like, cool, we'll take a tax write-off.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call us back.
Yeah. It's just a business. It all equates to money.
Yeah.
Speaking of money, God, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say it is business, and that's why it's important to use professionals to help you. It costs you money to start and to interact with some of these people. But like in my experience, a real estate broker isn't charging you fees to represent you in a negotiation. They get paid out of the transaction. Mm-hmm. Lawyers will charge you. Accountants will charge you. Financial advisors, depending on what you do with them, they will charge you for some consultation work. But then you can work out an agreement with them that they get paid out of assets and management and things like that. Business partners, you guys work out how you're sharing money, like things like that. But as far as these initial things go, like there's no reason not to get a real estate broker to work with you to get your first lease, because they will not charge you any money. they get the money from the renter or from the landlord, and they have an interest in getting you a good lease because they want you to do it with them again and tell your friends that you'll do it.
True. I agree. I agree 100%. Getting to the point where an accountant, personally, I don't have an accountant. I do all my own. My collection is just throw everything in the banker's box. And at the end of the year, I sort everything out and give it to my tax preparer. However, I do pay quarterly taxes. I go to the preparer and say, print me out the form that I need in order to send money to the federal government or to the IRS and to the Department of Revenue in North Carolina. So I do pay my quarterly taxes that way, and you can do it yourself. It's not that difficult to do. But if you get into where you have employees, and the more complicated you're going to get, you're going to need more professional help. Again, my recommendation: if you're just opening up a store on your own, try to do as much as you can on your own, because you'll save money. You'll need that money.
I like that recommendation in terms of ultimately doing it yourself, but I do like the idea and the suggestion that you would at least consult with some of these professionals. Meeting with a professional does not mean you have to hire them or put them on retainer. And like as a business starting out, having a meeting with an accountant to say like, hey, what are some things I need to be concerned about and pay
Mm-hmm.
attention to, and taking good notes, you can apply that yourself. But it's helpful to
That's
just
true.
check and make sure you're not missing something.
That's true. No, that's a good point, Noah.
And I think one thing we've talked about your background, you came through a career and then started this business, later in your life. You had a lot of life experience and you had a lot of knowledge about how some of the stuff works. If somebody's younger and this is a first or second like employment opportunity for them, that they're trying to start this as their thing, you got to go to these people and professionals and get help.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I guess the older you get, like you mentioned, the more experience and the more aware you are of the different things. And it doesn't hurt to read up about and listen to podcasts about how other people do things. Uh, Even with this podcast, I'm always online. I'm looking at other people's podcasts to say, what can we do to make it better? I'm taking it upon myself. And I'm sure you're doing the same thing.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing too, is to use resources, but when you use online resources, to temper those with like reason and understanding of what they are. Sometimes you come across like blog posts about how to start a business that are designed to sell you something else.
Yeah.
You might not realize that it's not an actual educational post until you've read 3/4 of it and you're like deep into taking your notes. And then it's like, and if you'd like to sign up for our class,
Yeah.
you know, or you might find like articles on like a CPA's website that talk about things to consider when you're starting a business. It's designed to sell you like the CPA for you to work with. So it's going to say that these things are hard and
Yeah.
complicated.
Get your interest. They need to try to capture your interest.
Yeah.
And then if you're gullible enough to spend whatever the hell they're going to charge, that's fine. But there's other ways that you can ask people.
Yes.
That's another thing. Go ask other business professionals. Most of the time, they'll give you information that you can bank in the back of your skull and say, hey, that's good information. You don't want a competitor from down the street coming in and ask you, because I won't tell them anything. But
I was going to say it might be in poor form to go to your LGS and say, hey, tell me a little bit more about how you run your business, and then rent the space next to them. But
it's surprising, though. The LGS community is kind of tight knit. I mean, I deal with the person that's 30 miles away from me. I made a contact with a person that's 75 miles away from me. And they've given me information. They've given me distributors and people that I need to talk to. And I've shared information with them. A store that's 30 miles away from me, when she was short a couple of products and I had an excess of it, I made sure she got it so she can service her local community. And by the same token, she did the same thing for me. When I was short something and she had it, she provided it for me. So, you have to be able to talk to people. And they're in the same boat you are. If you really think about it, they may be 5 times the size of you, but they're in the same boat. They're out there to earn a living, run a local, a gaming store, a successful gaming store.
I think it's interesting. One thing to consider is that your competitors, like doing poorly or going out of business, doesn't necessarily mean something better for you.
Sure.
Like you might be operating at or close to your full capacity. You may not have a goal to expand or change something to accommodate like a higher volume. And so like having a competitor from the next city over go out of business doesn't mean that you're going to pick up 60 new customers because you may not get the allocation to service those 60 customers.
So I can almost guarantee you're not going to get that allocation.
They're going to end up going to TCG Player and getting it shipped.
That is true. That is true. Hey, Noah, we've been on this thing for a little over an hour already. Do you realize that?
I do, but you said you wanted longer episodes.
Oh, we're going to do a longer. Well, let's see. Let's transition into. You like that?
I do.
All right, we're going to transition to the next segment. We usually do store characters, but you and I had spoken. I'm going to throw those in every once in a while. That's not going to be a weekly event. Unless somebody really pisses me off, and then I'm going to talk about that person. Fun news. Okay, here we go. In Connecticut, back in 1901, they became the first state to pass the speed limit laws, regulating motor vehicles to 12 miles per hour within city limits and 15 miles per hour on country stores. They were the first state, or the first federal, or not federal, but entity to have a speed limit. I thought that was kind of neat. And let me see, the law required drivers in Connecticut to slow down upon approaching and crossing intersections and horse-drawn vehicles. If a horse appeared to be frightened, the driver of the motor vehicle was required to come to a stop. Those who violated the speed limit law faced a fine up to $200. $200 back in 1901, a hell of a lot of money. Yeah, that is. All right, another off-the-wall thing. We're let's see, where the hell is it? It's St. Louis Obispo. Pismo Beach, California. That's about 175 miles north of LA. It's just before the Big Sur area. It's a pretty area up there. I've been there before. California woman said that her family's vacation was ruined after her kids inadvertently gathered dozens of clams at Pismo Beach. My kids, they thought they were just collecting seashells, but they were collecting clams, 72 to be exact. And while they were enjoying their time at the beach, an officer approached them and told them it was illegal to collect clams without a permit, and a ticket was issued to them. All right. You didn't hear this story, right?
No.
Okay. Later, the person, her name was whatever the hell it is, Russ, received notice that she was being fined $88,000 for collecting the clams. And she fought the ticket in court. And the judge was sympathetic, and he only charged her $500 fee. But can you imagine that? So don't pick up anything at the beach anymore because it may be illegal.
Yeah, well, they tell you that when you travel to the Caribbean and they have these corals that they're trying to develop down there, it's illegal to transport coral. And so if you are at one of these like Bahamian places that they have like live corals in the water, and you find one and you put it in your pocket and you take it back on your cruise ship and they show back up in Florida, you can get arrested for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you have to be careful. You can't just pick up stuff.
Well, you got to be careful anyway because you're liable to catch. When I used to fish up in New Jersey, you ever hear of a Coney Island whitefish?
No.
You never caught a Coney Island whitefish?
No, tell me about this.
That is a condom floating in the water, and it's on genus.com, and it's referred to as a Coney Island. I hooked one day, and naturally I thought it was hysterical. But they float in the water up in that area because I've seen them on the beach before. So when you're with your kids at the beach, make sure you don't let them pick up anything that you shouldn't pick up.
We're usually just worried about the jellyfish.
Yeah, well, they look like Coney Island whitefish if you're not careful enough. All right, that's it for me for today, Noah. I have enough stuff. Next week, I want to talk about metrics. I want to get a little bit more into specifics about metrics because people have come into the store and said, what are the metrics you talk about? Why do I have to sign up for each individual event that you have? And all card manufacturers now are developing their own metrics. And essentially, what metrics are is it determines how much of support you're going to get from them.
Yeah.
So we'll
We can
talk about
that
metrics next time.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of things to say about data science, so we can talk about that.
Okay.
Well, John, let's wrap it up today. And since I made you ad hoc the intro, I guess I'll ad hoc the closing. I did want to shout out, we do have a patron. You know that we have a patron on Patreon?
Ben.
Yes, we have Ben. So thank you to Ben for supporting us on Patreon. Ben has signed up for that. He is working with us to try to come up with some other things to do to that platform to add value. Another update is that while we have said it for months that we are on iTunes, apparently we were not on iTunes.
Okay.
Guess what?
We're
now on iTunes.
All right.
So we fixed that this morning. Very excited to be part of that. There's some sort of a weird thing with how the episodes translated into the iTunes category. It says that we have 4 episodes in season 1, and then we have 5 episodes of an unknown season. I've yet to figure out how to fix that, but once I do, everything will, of course, be either season 1 or no season. Maybe we'll do seasons by year. If we can make this a full year worth of thing, we can cap it and start another season.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, what do we talk about? Podcast, people get, or people who do the podcast, who are the creators, if they get past 7 episodes, they're going to be pretty successful. We've gotten to what, 10 now or 11?
This is the 11th.
This is the 11th. So, we keep going. We're running into obstacles here and there regarding how to use these damn mics right and the tables to use and everything else, but we're getting it sorted out. And we listen to our customers. People do come into the store and they make suggestions, and certain things they really like and certain things, they could care less about, but we do listen to them. So if you have any recommendations, come to me, or if Noah's in the store, you can talk to Noah.
Well, we do have social media. We don't use it very effectively, but we are happy to try to interact with you there. We have Twitter and Instagram for interaction. We also have our YouTube posts. We're working on getting the videos uploaded. The first several episodes are no video, audio only, but we are recording video now. Like, you should eventually be able to see our smiling faces.
God.
But we can interact better on YouTube than we can on any of the other platforms. You can make comments that are attached directly to videos, and we get updated and notified about that and can interact that way. So we're excited. I think it'd be cool to interact with people that are in the community that are not in this game store. A lot of our response right now has been in-person conversation, and we are having those conversations. But interacting with those that are listening around the country would be a lot of fun. I guess we'll close with one other bit of information about that. John, you like to hear where we have listeners from, and I was looking this morning, and we have listeners from several new places.
Really?
Yes. So if this will pull up, we've had 208 episode plays in the last several days. We have 39 followers now, and where's our...
39. Wow, we're getting there. We're big time, though.
We do, and we're switching over here. Let's see, audience. We have people in the United States, Canada, Germany, South Africa, and we've added Mexico. So if we really get on our game, maybe we can translate into Spanish and we can start going down for the Central and South American audience.
Is gracias count?
Yes, as long as you make sure you pronounce it right and none of that gracias stuff.
You got it, Noah.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody, for listening. And until next week, keep playing your games.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for listening, and send money.